This is the TSG Multimedia Podcast for January of 2022. We're sponsored this month by Automatic and the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. Thank you very much. I'm your host, John Abaticola, and Happy New Year, everyone. 2021 was a bit strange for a number of reasons, but let's talk about some of the things that happened. January, for me, was filled with a lot of Zoom calls and other online events as we slogged through the continuation of the pandemic that started in 2020. We streamed a couple live shows, including an episode of the TSG Live Crew Lounge. I had the chance to catch a Union Pacific work train out on the coastline, and the Bay Area SIG meet happened on the last weekend of the month. It was a lot of fun, but not nearly as fun as this year's will be, but I'll talk about that later. February saw the pilot episode of TSG Live Model Railroading featuring Rob Spangler from Utah talking about signature scenes with a great discussion about finding interesting details in everyday photos of regular places. The kind of details that make scenes on model layouts far more convincing. We also had a great discussion about technology in model railroading on that month's TSG Live Crew Lounge episode. We also started planning for the PCR's virtual convention. March was filled with tons of Zoom meetings planning the convention I just mentioned. We still managed to fit in some TSG Live episodes as well as some in-person production sessions. The lead up to the PCR convention was really stressful. We were trying to do something that hadn't really been done before, which meant a lot of learning and a lot of planning. On March 28th, the Napa Valley Model Railroad Historical Society announced that they had lost their legal battle to remain in the buildings they had occupied at the Napa Valley Expo for decades. It wasn't completely unexpected, but it sucked nonetheless. April was when the PCR convention took place. It was a pretty important event because for a lot of the people on the tech committee for that convention, it was a big test run for what we were planning for the national NMRA convention in the coming July. It turned out to be quite successful, and we learned a lot about what worked and what didn't work. Much of the success of the national in July was a direct result of what we learned during the PCR convention. I think a more important aspect to that event was the friends made from both the planning and execution of that event, but also from the participants. Clinicians and attendees alike, what a great experience. Also in April, we started planning and recording the content for the NMRA National Convention, Rails by the Bay 2021. May was jam-packed with recording sessions and editing for Rails by the Bay. In addition to this, we went to record layout tours, and for the first time since the pandemic had started, as our second COVID vaccine shots kicked in. I'm starting to realize while I'm thinking about this past year that it was probably way busier than any other year since I went full-time with this in 2015. June was also jam-packed with recording and editing clinics for Rails by the Bay. One thing I have to mention is that there were several of us doing the recordings with the clinicians, and I don't think there's any way possible that the event would have happened without everyone's help. The national convention really was a team effort. In addition to all that, during the months of May and June, I also squeezed in half a dozen layout tour shoots with layout owners in the Bay Area as well as the Sacramento area. We ended up staying with our friends, the Roquets, when we went to Sacramento. So a big shout out to Mike and Jess. That last half of the month was a real race to get all the editing of the convention clinics done. July saw the execution of the Rails by the Bay 2021 National NMRA Convention. It was a completely virtual event and went off with very few hitches. 5 straight days, 10 hours each day with 2 separate tracks, just wall-to-wall clinics as well as live panel discussions, dozens of breakout rooms, hundreds of attendees, and man, what an amazing success that was. When we set out to do this convention, we had hoped for maybe 200 attendees, and we thought that was a high estimate. That would have been a success in our minds. We ended up with something like 500. A lot of the things we had planned were even more successful than we ever imagined they would be, and we learned a lot. I think more than we expected to learn. things that will be applied to future events too. Not only because the pandemic continues to go on, but more importantly, in order to include people who otherwise would be left out of great model railroading events. I'll talk a little more about this later. With the convention over and the success that it was, there was a huge sense of relief that I know I experienced once it was over. And we got to do some other things in July, like an operating session at Ray Turner's Mystic Mountain Garden Railroad, riding the beach train up at Roaring Camp, and also a special event out at Railtown 1897. In August, we had an after party for the NMRA Convention Planning Committee. This was a special excursion at Ardenwood in Fremont, followed by a visit to Jack Burgess's Yosemite Valley Railroad and a dinner at a fancy Italian place in Fremont. I think the team really earned it, and I think everyone who was able to make it to the event had a great time. The best part about it for us was getting to meet people in person that we had only met in Zoom meetings prior to that. Virtual friends are as real as in-person friends, and you really find out when you meet them in person. Another highlight of August for me was meeting up with my friend Robin Gilstrom to shoot a video about his N-scale McKean car. I spent the days after the big convention, then leading up to August 18th, with Gary and Alvin finalizing our planning for the epic trip of 2021. The Chasing Trains episodes from that trip are still trickling out on the channel once a month, and I think that they document the events of that trip pretty well. So I won't go into too much detail about that trip here, except to say that it was an amazing 2 weeks with great friends, new and old alike, all along the way. And it was really tiring, but I was having such a great time along the way that I didn't really notice until the end of the trip when I finally got home in early September. I had a couple weeks to recover from that trip before going to the Mariposa area to record for this month's layout tour. It's the Jekyll family massive O-scale layout, and you'll hear about that a little later in the program. While we were up in the area, we also went to the Yosemite Mountain Sugar Pine Railroad for the first time ever. This was the after party for the PCR convention I was talking about earlier. It happened all the way back in April, and it was another example of meeting people we had only met on Zoom calls up to that point. What a treat, and to see that railroad for the first time was also great. We stayed with our friends Glenn and Kathy Sutherland, and just hanging out with them made that trip a real highlight of the year. October ended up a little less busy, recording a layout tour of the famous Santa Cruz Northern with Jim Providenza. That'll come out next month. And taking a trip out to the California State Railroad Museum for a Coast Division outing. This was another one of those opportunities to meet people in person for the first time and to see friends that we hadn't really seen since before the pandemic started. Also, a great chance to see the NMRA exhibit at the museum. Just a great day trip in every way possible. We also went to Santa Cruz to ride the tram they were demonstrating for the citizens of Santa Cruz County. That was an extremely interesting experience. Talk about state-of-the-art technology in action. October was capped off with Halloween at the Fern Creek and Western Garden Railroad in Santa Cruz. That wasn't really a railroad-related event, but it was a great excuse to hang out with friends, and an event that had to be skipped in 2020 due to COVID. November included the SBHRS Open House, a visit to the Pleasanton Fairgrounds, my birthday, and a lot of donuts. I won't go into detail over the events of November since the last podcast had a pretty detailed segment about November in review. So this all leads up to December. All right, so today I'm going over to the SBHRS. That's the South Bay Historical Railroad Society. You heard plenty about that on the podcast from December. But we have to go and have a little meeting to talk about some of the details of the SIG meet that I've been telling you about over the past couple months that we're doing in February. So I'm going to meet with my friend Seth over there, and we're going to talk to some of the people at the SBHRS to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And while we're there, I think we're going to see a friend, well, more than one friend, but there's someone else who's out there today doing some chasing trains. and I have something for him. And should be interesting and fun. So let's go. This is one of those times where you never know who you'll run into. I actually did know I knew who I would run into today because I knew you were going to be here.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought something for you. Happy Christmas, man.
Thank you.
You can open it if you want.
Yeah, why not? Came early. Christmas is early.
Yeah, Christmas came early for you, Jamie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Remember I told you when we were at the ACCRS a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
That I had some of those? Well, here they are, just for you.
Oh, cool.
So I figured I'd make it a Christmas present.
Yeah, I'm always looking for containers, that's for sure.
These are 40-foot HO scale containers for your intermodal train. Happy birthday. Happy Christmas.
Well, thank you. I already have plenty of containers, but I can always use more. So.
Yeah. So tell the people on the podcast what you're doing here today.
So the main reason I'm here all the way from San Ramon is to see the Caltrain holiday train.
Right.
And apparently I'm being invited to run trains here as well. So
isn't that nice?
So I have 3 HO engines with me, and so hopefully I'll get to run them a bit.
Yeah. Hey, Jamie, you having fun?
So far, yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. It's a little bit different from our layout, so
yeah,
I'm trying to relearn everything.
Hey, Jamie, tell me about the train you're running here today as a guest runner.
Well, it's nothing too impressive. It's just a Union Pacific local right now with a single GP40.
Yeah?
And about 10 cars, so.
You've run here before, though, too, haven't you?
I've run here maybe once.
Oh, okay.
But I was in the yard over here, so I was a little bit more exciting. We had a really productive meeting here and determined that everything that we want to do for the SIG meet in a couple of months here, or I suppose it's going to be next month already, because this is for the January podcast. But everything is in place, and it should be really good. The facility will do everything that we need it to do, and all the arrangements are pretty much underway now. All the planning is coming along exactly as it should. I'm really excited. The SIG meet on February 6th. Well, it's on the 5th and the 6th, but our live part will be here on the 6th, and it should be a great event. Really, really looking forward to it. On December 15th, I went live with Michelle, Talking Trains, with a fellow named Charles Malinowski, who did a great presentation about traveling on Amtrak. That was followed by another guest, John Crisanti, who's a really great photographer, and he shared about 20 or 30 photos of various Amtrak trains that he took from his collection. It's just a great time. You should definitely check that one out on the replay if you missed it. On December 18th, we had a great live stream about model railroad operations with Seth Neumann. Unlike most of these live streams, in this case, Seth came to the TSG Intergalactic headquarters and was streaming from the satellite office I have here on the property. It was a great excuse to hang out, and in the process, we also had a great program. Definitely check that one out on the replay if you missed us live. It's December 19th and we're going to Niles Canyon today. We got a call from my friend Alan, who works in the steam department, and he said they're doing something pretty cool. And we also want to get an update on what's going on with the 1744. That's the Southern Pacific engine that they have up there. They got a couple of years ago, if memory serves, and they're in the process of restoring it. It's a 260. So anyway, let's head out and see what we find. So what you're looking at is called a ring of fire. This is something that they actually had to build because you can't buy these anywhere. And what it does is it heats up the tire on the driving wheel of this locomotive enough to where it expands and they can knock it off with sledgehammers. One really challenging thing about working with stuff this heavy is it takes 10 or 15 minutes just to turn the thing over to get the other one off. So we're going to hang around and watch them do the other one as well. This is pretty fascinating, especially when you think about the fact that this is something that just doesn't happen on most railroads. And they don't have all the official facilities that you would expect a railroad like this to need to do this kind of work. These guys are all volunteers working with what they have. And I think that really makes this whole process and this organization a lot more interesting. One of the things that I'm asking these guys to talk about today is this project, SP 1744, and some of the things that it takes to take a locomotive basically down to its bare bones state like this and rebuild it back into something that's going to look like a locomotive. That's what this is. This is the 1744's frame. It's just missing almost everything off of it. So it's really just a shadow of itself, or a skeleton of itself. And as I was talking to these guys here today, I was thinking to myself, as someone who's been around these kinds of projects and documented a lot of restoration and preservation projects, I understand that it's a lot of work, but seeing it in this condition and knowing what it's going to end up as makes me appreciate what they do even more. The level of commitment and time and just hours and hours of work and figuring out how these things are supposed to go together and just taking it all up. It's a lot of work, and it's just kind of mind-blowing to realize the level that they go to make these projects happen. It's just amazing to me. So as we're doing this video today, we ran into Chris Hauff, who's always out here. You can see he's strapped on his camera. This guy has documented everything for Niles Canyon Railway for, the last 5 or 10 years or something?
We're coming up on 10 years, actually, since coming to the Bay Area from Western New York.
Great. One of these days, I'd like to have you on the channel just to get some information about your experiences, because we've talked a little off camera, and I think it makes an interesting story.
Yeah, it's always an interesting, I'm an active volunteer. I do a lot of paint and lettering work, but you always are torn between also documenting what's going on and what others are working on. And I don't always get to document everything. I'm only out here a couple hours a week, so there's a lot that goes on that doesn't get documented, or hopefully gets documented by others. But we do try to get as much as we can and then try to share that through social media and other avenues. And just having a record of what gets done. In some cases, it's also remembering what you took apart and need to put back together later.
Right. So maybe sometime in the future we'll do like an interview or something.
Yeah, sure.
Chris's
That'll be
story.
Great.
Just because he's always out here, and most of what I learn about what goes on around here is thanks to you. Yeah. So you're doing a great job.
Appreciate it.
For the PLA and Niles Canyon Railway,
yeah.
And I don't know that most people would know what was going on if you weren't out here doing it, because I don't get out here as often as I would like to. So
it's important that we document things and we share what goes on, because the general public doesn't always see what happens behind the scenes, and it's really important to get that shared out there, because we're always looking for more volunteers and other people to help and things like that. So
and not to make you blush, but I told Chris before that he's one of my heroes out here for all the documenting that he does. So thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thanks.
All right, so we're about to take off from the Niles Canyon Railway, Brightside Yard here, and I think this is going to make a really interesting video, because you know me, I like to show you things that you don't see every day, and I think taking the tires off of a driver or two from a steam engine is something most of us don't see every day. So I'm really glad that I was invited, so thanks Alan for inviting us out here to document this, and thanks to all the people that were here that talked on the video, which you'll see sometime in the near future here on the channel. So, signing out from Brightside Yard.
On Christmas Eve, I got email from my friend Piyush at LocoFi. That's the company that makes the decoder modules that I've shown here on the channel that work over Wi-Fi instead of using DCC in the tracks. The email I got had a big announcement that they are now supporting consisting. This is a pretty big deal, because one of the weaknesses, if you want to call it that, of the LocoFi modules was that they didn't support consisting in the past. I think that makes the product even more relevant, and I can't wait to see what other advancements they make in 2022. Maybe they'll come out with an iPhone app to control the trains. Hint, hint. I had a great time on the 25th joining Sparky 107 for his annual holiday show. We managed to give away a bunch of DVDs and had some laughs together. And in addition to the DVDs that we gave away, there was a ton of other stuff that other people called in to donate. And there were other gifts that Dave collected as gifts for fellow model railroaders. And I think that what Dave does for the model railroading community on YouTube is important, and he deserves all the support that we can give him for his efforts. I encourage everyone who enjoys model railroading to look at his channel here on YouTube. It's Sparky 107. I hope everyone had a great holiday season. I know ours was pretty good, with the exception of some really bad news that came this past Monday. I received an email from our dear friend Bernhard Beck's wife that he had died the night before. And you might remember Bernhard, as he has appeared on the channel many times over the past few years. I first met Bernhard when I was arranging to do the Silicon Valley Lines layout tour, and I think he was the president there at the time, and for most of the time that I knew him. And we became friends very quickly, and I would see him at other model railroading events, as well as at Silicon Valley Lines when I was invited to operating sessions there. And we also did a Model Railroading 101 episode together about virtual ops. Bernhard was one of the key players when it came to developing the virtual ops at Silicon Valley Lines. As a matter of fact, he wrote the virtual locomotive throttle program that they use. Bernhard was a regular on our weekly hikes too, and he went with us to all of our favorite spots. So his kindness and willingness to help others and quick wit, I think, are what I will miss the most about him. I think the model railroading community has lost a very good member far too early, and thanks for being a friend, Bernhard. On a lighter note, I got quite a few catches of the month to share with you this time, so let's get to that now. Our first batch of catches comes from Rowan Kinane from Down Under. The first clip shows the 1951 built steam locomotive M4 departing the terminus of the Don River Railway at Don Junction during a beautiful winter day in August of 2021. The second clip was taken on the same day, and it features triple-headed TR class locomotives hauling Tazrail train number 131 across a bridge at Longford. The third clip was taken at the beginning of September and features a DQ and 2050 class hauling Tazrail's coal train through the site of the Evandale Railway Station.
The next two shots were taken during the 150th anniversary of Tasmanian Railway's gala. This one shows English Electric Y4 during the morning. (1902) built C-22 works the official train with the museum's vintage collection of carriages dating back over 100 years.
The final shots were taken on December 1st. The shots are of H2, which was built by the Vulcan Foundry in 1951. This locomotive is currently stored at the Derwent Valley Railway's workshop at New Norfolk, where it awaits a return to service in the future. Next up, these shots from Bernhard come from the SBHRS HO scale layout. I like what he did with the digital processing to make modern shots of a cab-forward AC5 model on a layout look like aged photos of the prototype. Nice job, Ben. The next shot comes from Stephen Sweat. It's a GP8. You heard right, the 7738 is a GP8 that works at the Bluegrass Railroad Museum in Illinois. You can find a page about this locomotive by searching on Facebook. Logan Thurman sent in some update photos of his 484 project posing on a friend's layout. This model is looking real good. The next series of shots comes from John Welker, who took them in the summer of 2016 along the Alexander Railroad Company line. The ARC is a Class 3 railroad that serves 20 customers along its 18-mile route from Taylorsville, North Carolina to an interchange with the Norfolk Southern in Statesville, North Carolina. The number 12 is a former Southern Pacific SW1500 that was built in 1972. And finally, these last catches come from Sean Koga. A bunch of his projects are posed on his module. And this short video shows off the lighting as well. Thanks, Sean. If you have a catch of the month that you'd like to share, please send it to podcast@tsgmultimedia.com. Be sure you own the material and let me know the what's, whens, and wheres of what you're sharing.
In 2021, this channel had over 2 million views, more than 300,000 hours watched, and almost 8,000 new subscribers.
I'm really proud of what we've accomplished over the past few years, and I want to thank everyone who watches for helping make all of that happen. I think this really demonstrates that we're sharing content that people enjoy, which is the goal here. I've been talking about the SIG Meet for the past couple of months. Well, it's coming up on February 5th and 6th, and here's what we're planning for it. First off, there are 3 ways to enjoy it. The first is the in-person way. The second is fully virtual. And the third is what I call fly on the wall. So let me explain. On Saturday, February 5th, the event will consist of 8 or 9 hours of virtual layout tours with layout owners available for questions and answers after each presentation. Everybody does that virtually. Then on Sunday, we'll have in-person clinics, panel discussions, and a layout challenge at the Santa Clara Depot in person that will also be simultaneously held as a Zoom meeting for anyone who cannot attend in person. So the all virtual attendees attend both days on Zoom, and the in-person attendees attend the Zoom call on Saturday, and then they come to the in-person event in Santa Clara on Sunday. Both of these paid categories have access to all the extras you would expect from attending the event. So what's the fly on the wall thing I mentioned? That's right here on this YouTube channel. I will simulcast both days right here live for free for anyone who cannot afford to attend. The only real drawback is that the YouTube viewers will not have access to all the extras that paid attendees get. That means you won't be able to ask any questions or participate in any of the clinic goes on sessions. We're trying to reach as many people as possible and spread the knowledge and information that comes from this event. I covered the SIG Meet in 2019 and also in 2020. You can find those videos here on the channel if you simply search for SIG Meet in the search window. That should give you some idea of what it's about and why it's done every year. If you'd like to attend either in person or virtually, we're running an early bird special that's for 25% off. Go to the website listed in the video description below for more information and to register for the event. I can tell you from attending in the past that the amount of high quality information from this event is worth well more than the price of admission. The other cool thing about it is that this is not a fundraising event. The cost to attend will pay for the cost to put on the event, with whatever is left over going to the various nonprofits that are helping us put it on. I'm really keen on the SBHRS being part of this because we're holding the in-person part at the depot. I'm very excited to be part of the team putting this thing together, and we'll have a live stream later this month that will answer any of the questions that you might have about it. In the meantime, like I said, go to the website in the description below and sign up. The number of attendees will be limited, especially for the in-person attendees, because there's a limited space at the depot and there is a maximum occupancy limit. Now for this month's program schedule. Next Friday, that's January 7th, we have a product spotlight. On Saturday the 8th, it's an amazing O-scale layout tour with the Jekyll family. Then on the 14th, we have N-Scale Friday. On Saturday the 15th, get ready for the next episode of Chasing Trains, covering Part 5 of the epic trip from 2021. On Wednesday the 19th at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, join me and my co-host Michelle as we talk trains with the best viewers on YouTube. Then on Friday the 21st, it's the next product spotlight. On January 22nd, we have a special edition of the TSG Live Crew Lounge. On this episode, we'll be talking about the annual Bay Area SIG Meet that I was just talking about a minute ago. On the 28th, we have another product spotlight. And finally, on January 29th, that's right, January has 5 Saturdays this year, it's an update from Niles Canyon Railway, including the Ring of Fire we saw earlier in this podcast. So, we're at the start of another new year. A year ago, I think we all expected 2021 to be leagues better than 2020. I don't know about everyone else, but we made the most of it here, pandemic notwithstanding, and I'm expecting 2022 to be even better. I hope you'll add your support to our efforts here by becoming a TSG Train Crew member on Patreon. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/TSG Multimedia. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.